If you're watching this right now, I bet you have a book idea, and congratulations. This is such an exciting path. It's such an exciting place to be. But with that excitement, I know sometimes there's also a little anxiety. There's also a little, who am I to write this? There can be a little bit of questioning. Will this idea work? So that's why this week we're going to talk about how agents and publishers evaluate book ideas. And I thought this would be a really fun angle, even if you are self-publishing, to address this topic because agents and publishers, it's a really competitive landscape. And so they're evaluating a lot of ideas. And so no matter what your path ahead is, I love self-publishing, but I also love putting a little rigor to it and really making ideation work. So today, we are going to talk about how to make your book idea work, but there's more. So we're just beginning a 7-week challenge. So you might be coming back to this video. You might be looking forward to the rest of the videos. But an idea that I'm refining and working through these days right here on YouTube once a week is the map to infinite creativity. And so we are going to go through this map together. We're going to go from ideation, which is where we're starting in the land of the unmanifested. And so this is where we ideate, we fantasize, and we strategize. Then we go into the territory of the manifesting. So we start to play with our voice, our unique voice. We love the creative process and we make it a regular habit that we can count on. We burn through blocks, which brings us to the land of the manifested. We celebrate the wins on a regular basis. We give ourselves small goals, and then we meet those goals in the next 7 weeks. This is a great time to just think about, what do you want to have done in the next 7 weeks? And then, of course, we grow our mission, we grow our audience, and we're not just thinking about a short-term quick win. We're also thinking about the long game, the big goals, and the long haul, sustainability. So that's what we're going to get started with right here, right now. And we're starting with ideation. So this is something I love that I heard from an agent who recently published a book called Get Signed. Her name is Lucinda Halpern. And one of the core things she looks for in a book is it unique and yet universal? Does it contribute something new to a genre or a subject that is already fascinating? And so this is a little bit paradoxical. And the best way to handle paradoxes is by showing through examples, because paradoxes do work. So here we are on our map, and next we've got 3 examples. So as you're taking your own book idea, I want you to kind of compare it. And I have a great exercise at the end of the video, but let's talk about some book ideas that have really worked on a big scale and how this central concept of unique but universal works for them, because it works again and again and again. This is such a great way to refine and evaluate an idea. So here we have self-help genre and the book attached. This book blew up. So it was on a universal subject, which is attachment and romantic relationships. And so the thing this did really well on universality is attachment theory is used to describe relationships where one person might be thinking about the relationship a lot, putting a lot of effort and energy into the relationship. So they might have an anxious attachment style where they're getting anxious about the relationship. And then there's a pattern of couples where a lot of times they sustain relationships with avoidant people who deal with relationships by being distant, by kind of creating a power dynamic, by not investing fully. And so between the two, we have one who's hyper invested and we have one who's like letting the other person do all the work. And so this is something that really hit a universal nerve. A lot of people identified with attachment theory in relationships. And even people I know are talking, they talk to me about it all the time. That's how I found out about this book. Is it hit a universal nerve. But why did this book do so well? This isn't the first book that was written on attachment theory, but it was the first personal book. It was the first practical book. The books that had been written before on this subject were rather academic. Rather than using people as examples, they would use studies as examples. They would kind of take an expert stance, a distant academic stance. This talked about dating situations that we encounter every day. And it was just really fun and practical and simple. And a lot of people put it to work in their lives. So what made it universal? This relationship pattern that a lot of people get into. What made it personal, what made it unique is the fact that it really spoke to people in dating situations where they were at. And it's actually geared toward people who have an anxious attachment style. And so I thought that book was really interesting. Another book that did really well. So, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, genre fantasy. So this is about a woman who lives for 400 years, but anytime she walks out of a room, the person forgets who she is. And so within fantasy, this hit a lot of universal desires. We love time travel. We love, there's a romantic aspect of the book. And so this was a fascinating romp across time in which we had really strong characters and just kind of this fantastical, interesting fantasy concept, universal. A funny thing about this, and this goes into what makes it personal. Recently, I was reading, this book was published during the pandemic in 2020. It was one of the biggest books of that year. And I recently read another book by Michael Haig, How to Stop Time. I can't remember exactly the title, but it's similar to that. And it was the same concept. It talked about a man who lived for 200 or 300 years. But I will tell you, and so on the one hand, picked that book right up. I like romps through time. That's awesome. On the other hand, it was more conceptual. The characters weren't as strong and developed. They weren't as particular. And so brings us into what was unique about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Why did this one really get traction, whereas other fantasy books, other historical fantasy books that give us a romp through time, they didn't take off in the same way? She's not the first person by any means to do this weird concept around aging and moving through long distances of time. I mean, there's F. Scott Fitzgerald, Benjamin Button. There's so many time fantasies. What she did is, and as a person who once lived in Williamsburg, New York, I identified with this. We have a lot of the book is taking place in the French countryside 400 years ago. And then the other half of the book is taking place in Williamsburg, New York in the 2010s. And so it's fun because you can tell she really brought her own personal experience. I don't know if she lived in Williamsburg, probably she did, but she really brings kind of this modern take, modern feel. It's deeply personal because this is exactly, the kind of parties, lifestyle that people have in Williamsburg, New York. And, I'm sure she researched the French countryside 400 years ago. And so it has a really personal feel and personal take. Lastly, I wanted to talk about Demon Copperhead. So Barbara Kingsolver, a lot of us know and love this author already, but what did she do with this book? Talk about universal. She took the timetable, the outline of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. She copied it and she did an amazing job. It was so funny. As a big fan of David Copperfield, it was amazing how she kind of did this rags to not riches, but rags to success, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, this old story. And she made it new. And she made it new because her main character is living in the Appalachian Mountains, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he's going through the fentanyl crisis. So he has a drug addiction and he's going through all of those things. So she took Charles Dickens' formula and she applied it. That's the universal side. And she applied it to something that's really unique about right now. And so these books are wonderful examples of how you can do it. And it's pretty simple. And I'm going to give you a direct exercise about how to do this. And so bringing it back to the crown chakra. So the map to infinite creativity, it's based on the chakra system. And we're starting at the top where ideas come from. One thing I love to say about the crown chakra, which is our connection to the universe, our connection to source, our spiritual connection to something larger than ourselves, that's where through that quiet spiritual connection, our ideas come in. And so just as agents say, I mean, we're evaluating through this through a publishing lens, but there's something wonderful about the crown chakra where it mixes your inspiration with your unique experience. And so there again, we see the universal, the inspiration, the themes that we're all drawn to mixed up in our own experience and what we bring into it and how we make it new and alive. And that's how you can evaluate your own ideas. So the exercise for this week is 2 steps. First, I want you to pick 3 books that you love and ask yourself, they don't even need to be in the same genre. Pick 3 books across genres. What moved you? What do you love about those books? Because whatever it is you loved about those books, that's what is going to contribute to the universal conversation. If many people loved those books, they were moved by the same ideas. Then I want you to get specific. What are your values? What's important to you specifically? And think about, how does your experience create a new twist on something that's universally fascinating? So I hope this has been a good start to ideation. If you want your own copy, along with prompts that will get you started, more specific prompts to help you do this exercise, right down below, you can get your own copy for free of the Map to Infinite Creativity. And we're going to work through this territory together. So download below, right below is the sign up to get the Map to Infinite Creativity. And over the next 7 weeks, every single Friday, I will be bringing you a new video to help us get deeper into our book and develop that idea. So much love, and I will see you next week. Bye.